Greetings everyone, today I'll present about our group presentation, the impact of trade openness on economic growth in developing countries from 2014 to 2020. To you. Leong Jia Ching, Ong Seng Wang, Iliano Tan Hui Sing, Elvina Sin Sweet Ling, and me, Lim Suji. The introduction background of the study. The first one is to examine the impact of trade openness on economic growth in developing countries. The empirical analysis of this study consists of 60 countries' panel data from 2014 to year 2020. International trade is believed to be one of the numerous productivity and growth boosters, therefore its contribution must be proportionate to its scale. The positive effect of trade openness on economic growth depends on other variables, such as GDP per capita, but there is no strong evidence linking these variables. Statement of the research problem. We analyze the influence of trade openness on economic growth in emerging nations based on most persuasive empirical evidence on growth theory. And openness to trade promotes growth but is limited by starting per capita, income, and other explanatory variables. We find no significant evidence for an association between GDP per capita and openness to trade using pool ORS estimation. When we include baseline income per capita as an explanatory variable and eliminate the endogeneity problem, we find that openness has a significant beneficial effect. Furthermore, objective of the study. This study will examine the impact of trade openness on economic growth in 60 developing countries over the period of 2014 to 2020. The selected countries are listed as below 60 countries. Finally, significance of the study. The findings of this research show the impact of the trade openness on economic growth in developing countries. This research collects the information of the basic economic factors from different countries. It acts as an analysis report to policymakers in order from them to ensure the status of economic is sustained growth.
Hello, my name is Ong Seng Wang. So for this session, I will be presenting the literature review. The literature review has two parts, which is theoretical review and empirical review. First, let's talk about the theoretical review. The relationship between trade openness and economic growth has received much theoretical attention over the last 3 decades. Trade openness encourages specialization in industry with economic scales, which boosts long-term efficiency and productivity. New endogenous growth models explain a positive relationship between trade openness and economic growth as a result of international technology diffusion. A country with more openness can use advanced economic technology, which boosts economic growth. Open economic growth grows faster than closed one, and increasing openness boosts economic growth. Ben David and Lovey, 1998, say that lowering trade barriers would boost an economy. As a result, there are more countries reduce trade barriers as growth improves. A liberalized trade regime causes greater exchange rate depreciation, which reduces aggregate input supply by raising import price. Next, let us discuss about the empirical review. Multiple additional studies has demonstrated that trade openness positively affects economic growth. Kim and Lin, 2009, found that trade openness promotes economic growth in 61 high-income countries. When trade openness falls, economic growth suffers. In GD302 et al., 2010, quantile regression study, 75 developing nations are examined. According to their research, low-growth countries are more open than high-growth countries. Trade openness has a negative impact on growth in low-income countries but does not affect growth in high-income countries. High Vizarat and Low, 2016, found that trade openness affects economic growth both long and short term. According to the researchers, increased trade openness is responsible for both short and long-term economic growth. Gracecraft and Maikaritz, 2009, examined 16 sub-Saharan African nations and find no long-run relationship between the variables. Furthermore, Russell, 2010, found that trade openness has a negative impact on 34 African countries' economies.
Hi, my name is Alvina. I'll be presenting about the data and methodologies part. Gross domestic product, which is GDP, will be our dependent variables. Trade openness will be our key independent variables, while control variables will be unemployment rate, foreign direct investment, FDI, and also inflation rate. Our data will be collected from World Bank, where we will choose 60 different developing countries with a time period of 7 years from 2014 to 2022. Our result will be also from Stata, where it is a statistical software. First, we will run winsorization, where we will limit the extreme values in the statistical data. So winsorization at the first and 99 percentile, which means that a value less than first percentile will be replaced by the first percentile value, whereas value greater than 99 percentile will be replaced by the 99 percentile value. The second step is descriptive statistic. It is to summarize the data set into median, mean, standard deviation, maximum and minimum, and also the number of observation. The third one is correlation matrix, where we will measure the correlation between quantitative variables. The correlation coefficient ranges from -1 to 1, where when the number appears to be greater than 1 or lesser than -1, this means that there's an error. So a positive correlation coefficient indicates that two variables are prone to move together. Regression analysis, which is the fourth step, is for modeling and analyzing numerous variables to find out the relationship between dependent and independent variables. The fifth step is pool-OS model. It is to derive unbiased and consistent estimates of parameters even when time constant attributes are present. The sixth step is firm-fixed effect model. It is to explore the relationship between predictor and also outcome variables within an entity. So the last two steps is the GMM. The first one is two-step different generalization method of moment, where it is to remove the fixed effect and to remove entirely the missing data. And the last one is two-step system generalized method of moment, GMM, which is to estimate the unknown parameters and also reduce bias and improve accuracy.
Hi, my name is Eleanor Tan, and for this section, I will be presenting the results and analysis that were obtained for this study. The results and analysis that will be presented in this section focuses solely on the regression model that was used to fulfill our objective, which is to determine the impact of trade openness on economic growth in developing countries. The study included 60 developing countries from 2014 to 2020, with all variables winsorized at the first and 99th percentile. To emphasize, the preferred model selected for this study is the two-step system GMM to solve problems of endogeneity in the model. Additionally, it also helps us to overcome any shortcomings that are presented in the difference GMM model. Now, as seen in the table, the coefficient of trade openness shows that there is a positive relationship between trade openness and GDP per capita, or economic growth, at 20.1635, which is statistically significant at the 1% level. The results also show that inflation and unemployment rates are statistically significant at 1% level, with coefficients of 25.0975 and -184.7131 respectively. Now, the negative relationship between unemployment rates and GDP per capita holds true theoretically, as an increase in unemployment rates in the workforce will cause GDP per capita to decrease because people will be earning less. And lastly, the results for FDI are also statistically significant at the 5% level, with a coefficient of -0.000, portraying a negative relationship. Moving on, we then carry out the Sargan-Hansen test to test for over-identifying restrictions in the model, whereby H0 states that over-identifying restrictions are valid, while H1 states that over-identifying restrictions are not valid. So as seen there, As the p-value is less than 5% or 0.05, we accept hypothesis of H null and conclude that over-identifying restrictions are valid, meaning that the instruments used in the model are valid where they are not correlated with the errors in the first difference equation. Furthermore, we conduct the serial correlation test where H null states that there is no serial correlation, while H1 states that serial correlation exists in the model. The Arellano-Bond test was done for both the first difference and second difference serial correlation. For first order correlation, or AR1, if p-value is less than 5%, we will reject H null and indicate that there is a serial correlation. However, as shown in the picture, the p-value for first order correlation is more than 5% at 0.5341. Therefore, we accept H null to conclude that there is no first order serial correlation. Moving on, for the second order serial correlation, or AR2, if p-value is more than 5%, we will accept H null and indicate that there is no second order serial correlation. Thus, the p-value for second order correlation is also more than 5% at 0.0906. Therefore, we also accept H null to conclude that there is no second order serial correlation.
Hi everyone, my name is Leon, the presenter for conclusion. In conclusion, the current trend of global economic integration has substantially increased trade openness. The result of empirical study on the impact of trade openness on economic growth in developing countries from 2014 to 2020 are inconclusive. Based on the result of the regression models, OLS, peak effect model, two-step different GMM, and two-step system GMM, we can conclude that there is a positive and substantial association between trade openness and GDP per capita or economic growth. Foreign direct investment, FDI, inflation and unemployment rate all have an effect on per capita GDP. The study findings indicate that the relationship between the trade openness and economic growth is situational. If a country imports more than it exports, for instance, the balance of trade may be negative. If the negative currency of a country is strong, the lower cost of imports may discourage exports. Inflation-driven increase in the cost of input, such as material and labor, may have a negative impact on nation export. Next, the policy implication, which is that trade should be easier and borders should be better controlled, must be put into action and paid for. Companies are more likely to join global value chains because trade facilitation makes it easier for them to get foreign production parts. In addition, business benefit from trade agreements that are made to fit their needs. In order to do this, they have promised to protect and expand the right of worker and intellectual property to get rid of any barriers to entry from other regions. Standards for the environment are also set, and clearing customs is made easier. As part of their national development strategy, governments can encourage businesses to trade by stressing the importance of international commerce and competitiveness for growth, equity, and fairer distribution of wealth. Markets need to be open and fair. Entrepreneurship and productivity go up, prices and quality go up, and consumers have more choices. International trade is a key part of getting rid of poverty around the world, as many studies have shown. Our research is important for figuring out what countries can do to boost economic growth even more. Countries that are more open to international trade tend to have higher rates of economic growth, innovation, and productivity. Last, this study clearly demonstrates the need of additional research, particularly on the necessity of country-specific thresholds with country-specific consequences. Alternatively, applicator time series estimation method should be applied to non-average data in terms of non-overlapping intervals.